Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, conventioneers. I'm a useful idiot, and I'm going to talk about the Democratic National Convention now. So I want all my regulars to bear in mind that I sat through almost the entire Republican National Convention and listened to a parade of idiots. And then I did it again with the Democratic National Convention, all because I care about you. And I did this so you don't have to. So once again, I'm going to try and sum up the Democratic National Convention in a short amount of time. It's going to be a little trickier because I have to present a list of broken promises from last year. But let me get into the meat of this convention. Of course, it was staged almost identically to the Republican National Convention. In fact, if you watched either convention with the sound turned down, you'd probably think it was the same place. Except for the silly signs. And then we get the usual parade of idiots out there who say a lot but say nothing. And they, just like in the Republican National Convention, the Democratic National Convention was the same. I actually sat through the speech of Patty Murray. I actually sat through the speech of Nancy Pelosi. I actually sat through the speech of Reid. And they had a lot to say loudly about nothing. Just more empty political rhetoric that says nothing. And then both parties, and the Democratic National Convention as well, parades all their token Latinos, all their token blacks, all their token cripples, all their token everything to show how diverse and what a large tent they have. And of course, it's just pandering of the worst kind, but they lap it up anyway. And then, of course, we had the big moment on Thursday night, or was it Wednesday? And I can't remember, but they trotted out Bill Clinton, of course, the big event, the Democratic National Convention, the liberal icon. And, of course, just like all the Republicans don't really remember all the bad things about Bush, of course, the liberals don't remember any of the bad stuff about Clinton, Bill Clinton. And there was plenty at the time. And the fact that he manages to be a global hero now is really mind-boggling. And I got to hand it to old Bill. He's quite the consummate politician, though. He gave a great speech, and it really whipped the Democratic base into a frenzy, remembering the good old days back before Obama and back before Bush. And, of course, that's all a lie, too, because it all sounds really good. And that's one of the important factors I think most citizens need to realize. Just because it sounds so good and they say it so well and you really want to believe it, don't fall for it. This is what they are trained to do. They're trained to get up there. So and tell these lies and make it sound like they're doing you a favor. And it just drives it home how despicable they are as they pan across the audience at both conventions. And you see these mothers holding their babies in their laps, crying and looking up wistfully at the leader who is oppressing them and crushing their economic class. But Clinton is really something else. He has quite a view on things. He talks about the deregulatory era of the Bush administration, and of course forgets the ravaging of regulation during his own 8 years, including the fact that Glass-Steagall was repealed under his watch, which unleashed the entire financial crisis eventually. And, of course, we also know about his push to get more people who are not qualified for mortgages to get into the homeowner business. And I'm not going to blame him for everything like a lot of conservatives do, but he had a lot to do with it. And he certainly led up and opened the gates to these abuses that only continued under Bush. But Clinton has a lot of nerve to get up there and act like all of this stuff happened on the conservative watch. But that is the nature of politics. So then we get to Obama's speech, and pretty interesting crock as well. And he like Bill Clinton is quite the orator, and he makes quite the plea up there, and of course everybody hears it, and everybody hears his words, and they really want to believe this stuff. And And I'm sure a lot of conservatives should take note of the fact that he didn't use a teleprompter. He gave that speech right off the top of his head, as far as I could tell. So anyway, just a little moot point I wanted to bring up. But he had all sorts of interesting ways of looking at the numbers that made things sound pretty good. And of course, his bottom line is that we're better off than we were 4 years ago. And of course, when you cook the numbers as much as he has, things do look pretty good on paper comparatively. Certainly, the stock market and all the investors are doing better than they were 4 years ago, and that's the important thing. But he went on quite a tirade about all these things that he did and wants to do, and so he talked about all the trade agreements and how we're going to get back more into made in USA. But well, that hasn't really worked out that way, and in fact, trade agreements have been undermining how many products we have in the U.S. that are made in the USA, and he's talking about doubling exports, which, considering the globe is in a global contraction, economic contraction, we're not going to double exports anywhere. We'll be lucky to hold on to the export business that we have now. And he bragged about cutting oil imports to the U.S., but of course that overlooks the fact that simply demand is down. Nobody has any money. It's expensive, and people are buying less gas. The demand is low, so to brag about cutting our oil imports and saying that we're closer to being energy independent is laughable at best. And he talked about creating 600,000 new jobs in the natural gas industry, which, of course, generally is fracking. So the idea that we're going to have 600,000 new jobs in the fracking industry is something that actually should create fear in most Americans. And then he talked about cutting tuition costs in half in the next 10 years. Of course, that's not going to happen. Tuition has been rising significantly higher than inflation for many years so far, and will continue to do so. And then, of course, the big moment was when he bragged about the fact that Osama bin Laden is dead, and he brought the whole house down. So he's going to have all those bragging rights about Osama bin Laden, and yet his Justice Department, of course, is going to bring legal action against the very Navy SEALs that were responsible for that operation. So that's just how it works now. And of course, he talked about how Al-Qaeda is near defeated, but and yet the war on terrorism is expanding, and we have drones all over the planet, and we have to surveil and police state on American citizens as if terrorism is at epic new heights. And yet he says we have Al-Qaeda on the run. And then Obama also talks about the supporting the troops when they get home. And of course, that overlooks the fact that we have an epic and record number of soldiers coming back to the U.S. and committing suicide and not being able to get any help from the government. And in fact, we've also had a number of mortgage scandals involving abuse of veterans and the like. And of course, we have a record number of veterans who are homeless. So so much for supporting the troops when they get home. And then he said he wanted to protect from people getting tricked into mortgages they can't afford. And that's rather interesting too, because of course he's protecting the whole foreclosure and mortgage fraud industry, and did several handouts to the fraudulent mortgage business. So he's not really interested in helping homeowners that much. And he says he doesn't want bailouts for banks who break the rules. And well, it's a little late for that, because they got bailouts under him for the last 4 years, and they will be getting more bailouts, because that's also the nature of the beast. And last but not least, of course, he has to reiterate our commitment to Israel. So good to know that all our politicians are so concerned about all the issues in the United States, our foreign policy debacles, that got to make sure that we keep it on top of our list to make sure that we maintain our commitment to Israel. And but that's good for votes, and that's good for campaign money, so I don't really blame him for talking about that stuff. And of course, Obama talked about Mitt Romney very little. which is all right because, this isn't about Mitt. Obama has now had a little bit of humility at least, and seemed to want to project a little more class this time around and show that he's serious about, well, yeah, he knows he's had some disappointments over these last 4 years, but, we're better off, and the best way to forge ahead with his plans and all the successes in the last 4 years is to have 4 more years of the same policies. And sure, why not? And, of course, I missed the fact that John Corzine didn't have a major speaking spot at the Democratic National Convention. That seems like that would have been appropriate. Because not only is John Corzine and Obama really good friends, but, of course, John Corzine is a poster boy for Obama's vicious attacks on Wall Street and bringing the corrupt financiers to justice. And John Corzine is certainly a fine example of that. And why not have John Corzine speak? I mean, he must have a lot to say. And, of course, he's been busy bundling money to get Obama reelected, so he probably just didn't have time. So I'm sure that was just an oversight. But let's get to the heart of the matter, because as good as all this stuff sounds that the Democrats are talking about, like they're going to get it right. They didn't do so great these last 4 years, although they tried really hard. These next 4 years are going to be great. And they're setting up this new platform to make all these wonderful promises of what they're going to do in these next 4 years. They didn't do those last 4 years. And let's kind of take a look at last election's platform, 2008 when Obama was elected. Let's see how well they've done, because I think that's a good way to tell how much we're going to see enacted in the new 2012 Democratic platform compared to the promises they made in their 2008 platform. So let's go down the list. So they made the promise that we will strengthen the ability of workers to organize unions and fight to pass the Employee Free Choice Act. Well, that didn't happen. We will fix the broken bargaining process at the Federal Aviation Administration. Well, that didn't happen. We will fight to ban the permanent replacement of striking workers. Well, that didn't happen. We will ensure that every American worker is able to earn up to 7 paid sick days. Well, that didn't happen either. We will expand the earned income tax credit, raise the minimum wage, and index it to inflation. Well, not only did that not happen, but it's back on the 2012 platform, and good luck with that. And then we have, we will encourage diversity in the ownership of broadcast media, promote the development of new media outlets for the expression of diverse viewpoints. Well, of course, that didn't happen. We have continual consolidation in the media industry, and we certainly don't have the development of new media outlets. And it doesn't seem like he's for the expression of diverse viewpoints when we have the federal government going after people who post on Facebook and the likes of Julian Assange and anybody else that criticizes the government. And Obama's made a point of going after them. And so much for the expression of diverse viewpoints. And then he said we will ensure that the foreclosure prevention program is implemented quickly and effectively, and we will work to reform bankruptcy laws. Well, not only did those things not happen, but as it turns out in the new Borofsky book, we find out that Geithner and Obama are more interested in, quote, foaming the runway, unquote, for the banks, and they were never really that interested in slowing down foreclosures. And of course the evidence is that there is no slowing down of foreclosures. And then of course he said we will renegotiate NAFTA. That was a big platform in the 2008 Democratic Convention. And not only did that not happen, but apparently he went behind the scenes and assured Canada that he never had any intention of tampering with NAFTA. And then he took it one step further. He created a trade zone agreement that makes NAFTA seem like child's play, and that's the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Because it not only opens up markets in a Pacific free trade zone, but it actually sacrifices a certain amount of U.S. sovereignty in order to achieve those goals. And then they said we will put all non-emergency bills that Congress has passed online for 5 days to allow the American public to review and comment on them before they are signed into law. Oh yeah, like the NDAA, for example. So anyway, that didn't happen. And then he said we will require cabinet officials to have periodic national online town hall meetings to discuss issues before their agencies. And of course, that didn't happen either. Here, let me show you what happens to convention campaign promises. Yeah, they go right in there. And but I saved the best for last because I don't even know how to approach this. So I'm just going to read this and just bear with me because it's kind of long. But this is so full of lies that I'm surprised they didn't try to destroy all the evidence of the Democratic platform of 2008. They said, we will... I'm sorry. I'm laughing already. It's so funny. We will restore our constitutional traditions and recover our nation's founding commitment to liberty under law. We support constitutional protections and judicial oversight on any surveillance program involving Americans. And of course, as we know, the police state and the surveillance industry has exploded in the last 4 years. And Obama fought to make sure that the wiretapping program that Bush started would remain in place and actually grow and expand. So he said, we will review the current administration's warrantless wiretapping program. We reject illegal wiretapping of American citizens. That's funny, wherever they live. We reject the use of national security letters to spy on citizens who are not suspected of a crime. We reject the tracking of citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. But the Obama administration doesn't mind tracking the Occupy Wall Street movement and protesting against banker corruption. But yeah, he's interested in not tracking citizens who do nothing more than protest a misguided war. We reject torture. We will revisit the Patriot Act and overturn unconstitutional executive decisions issued during the past 8 years. We will not use signing statements to nullify or undermine duly enacted law. Of course, another bald-faced lie. I mean, these are like staggering. We will not ship away prisoners in the dead of night to be tortured in far-off countries, or detain without trial or charge prisoners who can and should be brought to justice for their crimes, or maintain a network of secret prisons to jail people beyond the reach of the law. We will respect a time-honored principle of habeas corpus, the 7-century-old right of individuals to challenge the terms of their own detention that was recently reaffirmed by the Supreme Court. Let me read that again, because this is really interesting in light of the National Defense Authorization Act. So the Democratic National Platform of 2008 said, we will respect the time-honored principle of habeas corpus, the 7-century-old right of individuals to challenge the terms of their own detention. I don't even have to say anything. We will close the detention camp in Guantanamo, the location of so many of the worst constitutional abuses in recent years. Of course, that didn't happen. It's still open and will remain open. In fact, we've been making a lot of improvements down there. With these necessary changes, the attention of the world will be directed where it belongs, on what terrorists have done to us and not how we treat suspects. So anyway, that's pretty bad. That's the entire Democratic platform from 2008, and they didn't come through on any of it. So anyway, I tend to agree with some of my other friends, including Bertley, who find these conventions disgusting spectacles, and there's nothing really of value to get out of it. And that's really true. 15,000 journalists show up at these things, and there's nothing there that is news. As one writer put it, quote, these conventions are trade shows for the political class where party insiders, journalists, politicians, celebrities, corporate types, and lobbyists mingle to arrange political hierarchies. The public is irrelevant besides being a nebulous cheering mass. And that's about as good a summary as a political convention as I could certainly muster myself. So I hope I didn't leave out any details, but there is my review of the Democratic National Convention in Charlotte, North Carolina, 2012. Sure glad that's over. I'm a useful idiot. Don't you be one too.